Welcome to the Smith and Rowland Show. Let's join our host, Alan Smith and Jeff Rowland.
Time again for the Smith and Rowland podcast. Today, I am the roving reporter. I'm recording from a new secret location that I cannot identify. The only thing I can tell you is Preacher and Chapel are both here. My wife Haley's joining us on the podcast. She has made a dessert for people, a protein peanut butter thing. And it is good. I'm telling you. And it's not supposed to affect, but it has effect. As soon as I tasted it, I went into this ecstasy of joy. And so there you go. We are talking about things that requires today a dessert. So grab your favorite dessert and join us on the Smith and Rowland podcast. Now our host, Mr. Alan Smith.
You and your desserts. You wouldn't even have that had your wife Haley not walked in and gave it to you right before we started.
Oh, listen, I labored for hours making this myself.
The only thing you labored at was not that. We do welcome everybody to the Smith and Rowland show this morning, and we're coming to you with some concern. And we did a podcast Sunday, on our friend Rick Joyner. There's Jeff. I actually ate dinner with him last night. I told him that me and you had a podcast on his behalf, and he said, well, thank you. And so I said that we had some younger guys trying to shoot all the older guys down. We just kind of felt like we need to say a little something, so we did. But as we're this morning night, we've already talked about it a little bit, Jeff, but I still have some deeper concerns, especially since I've watched Jonathan Cahn and his insight on the Olympian situation. We'll hit some of the little highlights of it perhaps even today, but we might even dive deeper Sunday. I'm not sure. But today I thought, give it a little skim over, and then Sunday perhaps we could go a little deeper here. But Jeff, he starts speaking in this teaching that he did this last week about showing how the Olympics actually was affecting the whole world. That this presentation, we had this opening of like the Last Supper that was so perverted of all these gay characters, about this picture of the Last Supper, this painting it was, which I don't know where that painting is now and what museum it's in. But one of the reasons this is so significant, because this was the opening ceremony, and basically the whole world's looking at this, and of this opening ceremony and of the Last Supper, and depicting it from, I guess, almost 100% homosexual characters portraying the 12 disciples and Jesus in the Last Supper. And so this Olympian opening, as Jonathan Cahn points out, is much bigger than we think. Jonathan Cahn says that there was just a lot of red flags that as Christians we need to be aware of. And even to the point of this beginning image it had, Jeff, Maria Antoinette or whatever, she was a French queen who was beheaded during the French Revolution, had these images of her standing there with her head chopped off. Now this is, got to keep in mind, this is the opening ceremony. A lot of children are watching this, right? A lot of children are watching it. Yep. The opening ceremony of this queen had her head chopped off, and in this picture she was holding her own head in her hands, and she was laughing, and then they showed blood going everywhere. And Jonathan pointed this out, how her severed head, and that she was singing and joking or whatever. But anyway, this significant opening picture of a woman with her head cut off, and then this was before you went into the Last Supper.
Yeah.
A fiasco.
Yeah. You also had the golden calf.
Yes, that was talk
part
about
of
that.
The opening ceremony. But all of this stems from pagan rituals. It's very heathenistic. Me and Haley was having a conversation a couple months ago, or a month ago maybe, about the Olympics and where it started. And there's all the allusions that Paul makes to running the race, and all of the sports, he uses sports analogies over and over and over and over again. The Olympic Games you could trace it back, if you wanted to the Grecian days, even the Grecian kingdom, especially during the Roman Empire era. There was these games that Paul makes these allusions to, and all of them had ties to heathenistic rituals.
Yes.
But we've never in our lifetime, we've not seen the spiritual debauchery at the same level that we're seeing it now.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to ask yourself the question, what has changed, or why is things changing? What's causing this? That Satan sees this opportunity to be more open now than he's ever been before with what he's doing. And that's the question that most people they fail to answer. It's almost like we expect it to grow darker. We expect these things to happen, but we're ill prepared when it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's no shock value anymore.
That's right.
Which is why Satan can be more open with what he's doing. If our only response is, well, this is to be expected, then, well, this is going to continue. It's almost like you're giving credence to it, or you're giving some kind of almost condoning it, even though I know that many don't condone this, and there's been a lot of outrage for it. But I've even heard comments like this, well, I don't never watch the Olympics, and I don't care nothing about the Olympics, so it doesn't bother me. But it does have effect on the earth when we tolerate this kind of thing going forth. And if we don't speak out against it, then we are tolerating it. We're condoning it. We're lending ourselves to it. So you have the severed head, you have the golden calf, and all of this is reminiscent of what has been going on spiritually across the world.
You know, we had these Olympic Games. I was just looking up here, Jeff. The first Olympic Games was 776 BC. That's when they started. And of course, Olympus was the home of Greek gods. You know, you got all of these Greek gods, these Greek goddesses, and the Olympics was a celebration unto all these gods and goddesses.
Yeah.
And is very, very pagan. And Jonathan even points out how in the beginning they were perverted. Of course, a lot of these goddesses and gods and goddesses of Olympia were somewhat perverted anyway. And so the first Olympics, the men would come and for all these sports, and he said that they were naked. Therefore you've got this, you still have this nakedness. I know they got on these uniforms now for these sports, but I mean, they don't leave much for the imagination's all I can say. But originally these games were played without any clothes.
Right.
And then I think they covered a little bit. But
even in the preamble of the Olympics this time, you didn't just have self-mutilation and the mutilation of someone's head being portrayed, the golden calf, but you also had, in keeping with what you just said, you had portrayals of sexual acts that involved bestiality.
Right.
That took place as well. So, it's no longer about, it used to be, the progression has been, it used to be, Alan, when we were growing up, that the sexual perversion was adultery. It went from that to homosexuality. Now we're looking at things pertaining bestiality. So, the progression always goes in a downward spiral. And that's what we're seeing in our culture today and in our society. So to see these things unfold in front of us should call us to answer some questions about ourselves. What are we willing to say about this, and what kind of stand are we willing to make on it? Because it won't be socially acceptable. What would be viewed as coming out against sports is actually not that. It's people taking sports and then using that to portray a social agenda, which is what's happening in the professional arena of sports, even in America. Just without the Olympics. Right. When you talk about the NFL, Major League Baseball, professional basketball, all of these sports entities are now taking social stands and political stands. Right here in the Olympics, it's an onslaught against Christianity and even against other religions that declare some type of moral standard. This is the loose of all restraints as to what we've seen in the Olympics.
Here we got the Olympics started in 776 BC. I thought this was interesting. Of course, we know it was built around Olympia, all the gods, the goddesses, and all this, and how perverted it was then. Now, one thing that kind of astonishes me is I'm under this idea, Jeff, that what the perversion that I see in the world today, I'm kind of thinking this is the worst it's ever been. But as I see this historical events, I think it's been just as bad, if not worse, in times past.
Yeah.
Maybe I could stand to be corrected there, but this is the way it looks to me. Now, here's an interesting thought. In 393 AD, okay, 393, this is after AD, after Christ, you had an emperor. Now, the Roman influence, continually grew in the Olympian Games. And then until 393 AD, an emperor named Theodosius banned the Olympic Games. So almost 400 AD, you had 776 BC to 400 AD, which would put it, 1,000, 1,100 years they went on there.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, this emperor, he stopped the games. He banned the games because he was Christian, and he declared this is all pagan rituals. These games are to glorify the gods. They're perverted. So this emperor, which, it takes a pretty good man, he said, I'm shutting it down. I'm starting all this paganism. And he was wanting to promote, of course, Christianity, which I think Constantine, he was what, Jeff, about 312 or something along in there? He was, that he, made it state religion there. But anyway, so this Theodosius, he says he deemed the games equivalent to paganism and had them done away with. So now here's the interesting thing, which I haven't looked it up here yet, but I will. But from 400 AD, let's say, the games were laid dormant for 600 years. And I think they came into effect back, I hadn't looked it up, but I think that the games resumed. You can look it up, or I can. The Olympic, let's see here, games resumed in 1896, I think, or 95. On April 6th, Jeff, 1896, the Olympic Games, a long-lost tradition of ancient Greece, are reborn in Athens. This is 1,500 years after being banned by the Roman emperor. Well, that math is not right there, but anyway.
It started in Olympia in Greece.
Yes.
And then, that
started back 1,500 years later. Boy, that's interesting. That was April 6, 1896. Now, it says here what was happening was Paris was having this big, like a World's Fair or something. It wasn't the World's, but it was some type of a big deal happening in Paris. And so what happened was in Greece, somebody here decided to reinstate the Olympia Games. Let's see here. I thought I found the name there. And the inauguration of modern Greek games was a milestone in international sports, culture, and cooperation. So that's when it was reinstated in 1896. We need to keep this in aware that these games these ancient games of perversion, paganism was stopped.
Yeah.
In 400 AD. Now, in my and your lifetime, we see them crank back up in the last 100 years or so.
Yeah.
Which I think is marking and proving that we are in the last days, Jeff.
If you go back to the start of the Olympic Games, a lot of it was in honor to the Greek god Zeus. And so it was all, even as it started, it was a paganistic religious festival of sorts. And so then when it, now that it's restarted, I don't guess we should be surprised at the religious connotations, at least of what we've seen with the last Olympics. Oddly enough, in 4 more years, it comes to Los Angeles. And I'm waiting to see kind of what they do here if they try to top what happened in France.
Now, the guy that revived these games is Baron Pierre de Coubertin. And he was the founder of these. He's the one that called them back forth in 1896, it says, Jeff. He was a great sports enthusiast, it says here, but little did he know he was resurrecting pagan godless worship.
Right.
That's what was known for. Now, Jeff, do you remember, and not to belabor this too long, but do you remember when the Olympics, when Hitler, it was 1936, Jeff, Hitler saw the 1936 Olympic Games as an opportunity to promote his government and ideals of racial supremacy and anti-Semitism. And the official Nazi party paper, I can't pronounce the German name there, wrote in the strongest terms that Jews should not be allowed to participate in the game.
Yes.
And so what happened is they're saying that the Olympics really didn't explode worldwide, or when it had its big advancement, I might say, was when these Olympics were held by Hitler, and he took advantage of this. And then the games exploded again to the level they are now. Now, just think about it. Here's Hitler. What exploded they started back in 1896, but what caused them to explode into a global thing that we see today is done by Hitler, which we know is this side of the devil himself.
Yeah.
Now, the reason we're doing this, a little bit of a background, Jeff, is because it's understandable when you see the Last Supper portrayed as the opening of the Olympics. We shouldn't be too shocked, even though we are shocked. But I'm saying it's pagan from the word go anyway.
From the start. It had religious consequences or religious connotations at the very beginning, to be held where the sanctuary of Mount Olympus was in honor of Zeus. All of it was done with religious connotations from its very beginning. So, we shouldn't be surprised at the attack on Christianity through the Olympic Games. It started as an anti-Christian or anti-God movement, a false God movement, if you will, showing and trying to elevate the strength of these Greek gods.
Yes.
I think it was Trevor that did wonderful teaching at New Life on how the Greek gods, and you correct me on this, but he was talking about how the Greek gods, though people think it's mythology, could have actually have been principalities and demonic spirits.
How that's true. That is the case.
And that being said, the Olympic Games then started in honor and in worship to these false gods. It would be an attack against Christianity that they would level as far as the religion goes. Yeah.
Well, it says that the 11th Olympic Games, when they were held in Berlin, Jeff, in 1936, it says here that it presented Nazism with an opportunity to show off their regime to the world. So they were using the Olympics. Not only did it explode for the Olympics, but it also did for the Nazi anti-Semitic. I mean, you and I both know with anti-Semitism that we have this great understanding or persuasion that when you watch, if people today say the Jews don't make any difference. Well, I mean, just read the writing on the wall. If they're insignificant, why is everybody trying to keep killing them for the last 2,000 years?
That's exactly right. This brings a very interesting question that I want to pose at you, and I know we're getting out of time here, but I do want you to consider this. Hitler brought about the rebirth of the popularity of the Olympic Games. Nazism is basically a religion.
Yes.
His whole political movement was basically religious at its core, and it was geared around anti-Semitism. Okay, here we are now in America facing anti-Semitism like we never have before in our history. The question I would ask is, the political movements, the political parties that we have now are becoming more a religion than they are a governmental policy party. And I would say that on both sides.
Yeah.
So that being said, the Olympic Games could be compared in drawing parallels to governments of our day. And it appears to me that that's kind of what's going on in our world now. We're more in agreement with the Olympic Games through our anti-Semitic governing policies. And that's becoming now a political issue. And it's a very much a political issue. I just seen an ad today by Donald Trump vowing that if he's elected, he will end anti-Semitism in America. I mean, you both know that can't be done politically. That has to be done spiritually. But I'm just saying that has now found its way into our political speech and dialogue.
Yeah, that's right.
As it was in Germany, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. We see the same thing happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it appears to me that with that thought, what we're seeing in the Olympic Games, this is where anti-Semitism leads you to.
Mm-hmm.
Is such portrayals as bestiality,
Mm-hmm.
a woman with a severed head, a
Mm-hmm.
golden calf, a mockery of the Last Supper. This is where it leads to.
Mm-hmm.
That's always in the mix of, and you'll find that as a common denominator.
Mm-hmm.
So I offer that as kind of food for thought around the political discussion of our day.
That's the reason we're taking a little more time, Jeff, in reviewing over what really happened there at the Olympics, and we'll try to have a crescendo as we take this. We could even take this video that Jonathan, and we could do some excerpts out of it if you'd like, because he covers a lot of incredible. But we're wanting to set the stage historically a little bit of what the Olympics about. Most people don't know that the Olympics stopped for 1,500 years.
Right.
And it just started back up about later 1800s, 1896, I think it is. And so here we find ourselves in these last days, and this goddess paganism worship in a worldwide forum called the Olympic Games is back up and running well. And as you can see, the opening scene, which we'll get into more Sunday, that opening scene at the Olympics was just a total blasphemous display.
Yes, it was.
And it was worldwide. And I venture to say, Jeff, what percentage of the world's children were watching this opening? It's just so disgusting.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely it is. Absolutely.
It's just, and you're saying, well, no, it's the Olympic Games. Yeah, but it's not about the games, trust me. It's about the worship.
That's exactly
So, Jeff,
right.
let's pick up. This is Friday's show, and let's go and pick up Sunday. We're going to have a big show about this. So we'll pick up again there. We've laid a little groundwork on the historical side of it, and we'll have more discussion Sunday.
Sounds good.
Okay, buddy. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining today's Smith and Rowland Show. You can check out our website at kingdompropheticsociety.org and our daily unplugged podcast at smithandrowlandshow.podbean.com. You can also join us on Amazon, Apple, or Spotify.